something we should not be doing at this time. You understand that, we all understand that. This shouldn't be done at this time. And I really believe you handle this all wrong.
Well, I'm going to go.
Mike, I'd like to go a step farther.
And
We could solve all of these. Why? Why did we not take this to a vote of the citizens of Mission? We live in a democracy. We fought a revolutionary war for the right to vote. We fought a civil war for the right to vote. This is a big enough issue with business people and the citizens of Mission. Why was it not brought to a vote?
Well, I can answer that question. and it's fairly simple. We couldn't even put this on a ballot. There's not a mechanism for a city to place a question as relates to the establishment of a utility which doesn't exist in state law on the ballot. There's no mechanism.
Let's call it a tax. That's what it is, Mike. Come on.
Call it a tax. You still can't. There's not a way for cities. If we had issued debt, we could put that out as a question, but it would have to be backed by a revenue source, and we can do it that way. But there's not a method within the Kansas Constitution outside of a petition against our ordinance to require it. We can't unilaterally or by ourselves put together a ballot question. We don't have the authority to. The sales tax we can do if we tie it to a debt issue and ask the voters to approve a quarter cent to retire.
How did we get the tax for Sylvester Powell?
Had-
We didn't have that built yet, and we got a quarter cent.
The quarter cent was for the expansion, and there was a question, and it was asked in July of 2002. It was voted on. It would have been the August primary. But we don't have the statutory authority to do that.
Well, I suspect
I mean-
we can figure out a way.
Right. Correct. As it relates to what I do, my mayor's here, a number of our city council members are here, and my guess is that it is something that I'm working on tomorrow, would be my guess.
The point is, what you're planning on hitting the businesses with is a killer for some of the small businesses. And my question is, your idea about how to tax the businesses versus homeowners is based on how much they use the road in front of their house. But in reality, Mission business or Mission residents are the ones that come to the Mission businesses. So I don't understand why you can't more evenly spread it out among, if you're going to do it, among the businesses and the residents, because the residents are the ones that are going to get the residents' streets taken care of. Johnson Drive Corridor is one street that most of your businesses are on. So to tax us thousands times more than what you're taxing the residents just doesn't seem fair.
Well, I'm going to have to correct you because it's not 1,000 times more.
So the 3,500 figure for a business like mine is way out there. So what is more in line for what I would pay?
Yours is probably more in the neighborhood of $360 to $420.
Why did that information not get put in the paper? Why did you throw those huge figures out to get everybody all riled up?
Because the question was, and what we were trying to answer is, if you took a property could have multiple businesses in it. And so we were trying to identify properties so that if you're comparing a Target store to a Hy-Vee to a Mission Bowl, you could get comparisons on whole properties. When you get into individual businesses that might make up, in your case, two businesses that share a property or a couple of addresses, it's significantly less.
So what's the square foot number?
The square foot numbers depends on the use. There's specialty retail use, there's general office use.
Give us a couple, 3 examples.
As soon as I give an example, I'm going to give one that's wrong. So I'm going to do one that I just did tonight. 6101 Johnson Drive, tire repair that's next to the Sears building to the east. That's that gas station that does tire service. Yeah, $244.34 a year. Let's talk about sidewalks for a little bit, because I get a lot of questions about sidewalks and trails. And one of the things that we've tried to do is, as we looked at the Johnson Drive corridor, how is it that you can pull residents into that corridor? And one of the models that seems to have worked in other places throughout the United States is, if you're building trails, don't build them on the edge where people go to the edge of the city to walk. Figure out how you build the trails through the community, and you start tying neighborhoods to your downtown area. So when we started the trail that was at Metcalf and actually now extends all the way to Rowe, that was done with county money. It was done with what's called congestion mitigation air quality money from the federal government. It was done with STP dollars. 83% of that trail that you see that extends from Metcalf to Rowe is actually paid for through these other grants. Those grants can only be used for trails. They can't be used for streets. So what we tried to do is, where we find places that we can leverage money to get these things built, we try to do it, especially if we can feed the neighborhoods into the downtown area. One of the 8 or 10 foot ADA requirement in terms of sidewalk width, what we hear from KDOT is typically 8 feet is the minimum they will allow in order for it to be considered ADA accessible or compatible or usable. And what we've tried to do is stay fairly consistent in terms of either 8 or 10 foot sidewalks, so that it allows both walkers and people that might use bicycles.
And at some point, the government needs to stop spending money and allow us the freedom to generate some more tax dollars.
We can continue to delay the maintenance on Johnson Drive, and it's one of the questions that we had in the spring. Is this the right time to talk about? There's a fundamental shift in our budget. Our budget, we're trying to pare down as much operating as we can and push it all to capital. And we're doing that for one reason. We can do more projects for less dollars now than we could 2 or 3 years ago. So if we can contract our operating expenses, which means for the most part, our employees, we will reduce the number of employees we have. Our salary has been frozen. It's going into the 3rd year. We will probably see reductions. If we can continue to push money to infrastructure, we're trying every way we can to do that, because we think we can get most of it done for a lot less than it would cost us when the recovery comes back. Because when the recovery comes back, there won't be the number of contractors will be finite, and it was sort of infinite 3 years ago in terms of, but the problem is we could just stop. But my question is Johnson Drive in a condition in which we should stop, or should we continue to work on it? Because, well, I'm going to let Dave Miller tell you how long it would take if we knew we were going to do Johnson Drive today before we would be finished with it.
In the spring, when you made this decision to say, okay, we need better roads, maybe the outlook was a little rosier for the economy. That may have changed a little bit since then. So maybe we need to rethink that and say, okay, let's start tomorrow morning with the Big Chief tablet, and let's start over. And this won't be accepted, it doesn't sound like, by the community of Mission. So what's a better option? Maybe we don't do the roads right now. Maybe we wait until the economy gets a little brighter, and it will, but we can't just spend money while we're in a downturn.
We're in dire straits. But how did we get here when Professor Powell passed away? We had $14 million. Now we're teetering on bankruptcy. However, there were numerous projects, walking paths, digging bricks out of the middle of the street, repaving a street, putting in a water fountain for some reason, I have no idea. And the answer I always get for all these projects is, it's government money. But we have to put in so much money too.
Correct.
We didn't need to take the bricks out of the street. And where are the bricks, by the way? Let's have a moratorium on everything. Stop everything right now. Fix the things that need to be fixed. And no more having high school girls take pictures of street signs at $20,000 a crack is what they spent to have college girls take pictures of street signs. That's ridiculous. Hire yourself 2 high school kids. We need to have a moratorium on everything. Bicycle paths and walking paths and what's that water park thing? I don't know, something to aerate the water. This is nonsense. We're surviving here. This is the fight for us to survive. The company's been there 72 years. With a lot of tax increase, I won't be there any longer. And I'm not the best thing on Johnson Drive, but I'm one of them.
Something that I would guard against is, and it's like I said earlier, we could eliminate our property tax in 2 years, you're going to pay.
I don't want to hear this.
But-
I want a
but-
moratorium
but-
on
but-
everything.
But Dave,
I want an accounting of everything.
we're not going to affect your property tax.
No, don't tell me that you did all this for the government. I want a moratorium. Everything is
We don't
about
represent
building
enough of your
the
property
correct
tax.
thing. No more bricks in the street, no more walking paths, no more nothing else. I told my employees, no Christmas bonus, and I gave your number to call.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We can't do this anymore. We can't, we tore down a house that's suspended over a creek, put a walking path in. How much did it cost to tear that house down? And if we tore it down, why did we rent it? Rent the damn house and tell them to walk around the house.
Because we would have had to pay property tax.
I mean, this is where we're at now. Through silliness, misspending, misappropriation. Oh, I got the money from the government. Well, you don't give a kid a bowl of chocolate and then expect him not to get sick. We're sick. The city is sick from all this government spending. This lady at McDonald's, I'm sure she about fell off her chair when she saw read the article. All of us here have a budget. The
Correct.
city should have one too.
We do.
Yes, but you can always say, give me more, give me more. Federal government, give me more. People, give me more. Give me more, I need more, I need more. That's where we don't have that thing. And the city is not being ran like a business. It's being run like a big baby who doesn't get enough.
Well, I just start with the fundamental question is, do you believe we should invest in infrastructure? You see that we're transferring money into the infrastructure. And if just, okay, so,
Was there
Okay.
or was there not suggestion of closing City Hall and moving it down here to the insurance company?
oh, yes, there was
Yes
a.
or no?
Yes, yes.
They were gonna spend money to close that, to move down to an insurance company. How much would that save? Where's the fiscal responsibility in that?
And Dave, did we do that?
That's beside the point. Even on
No, Dave, that is the point.
You would have got away with it, the city council would have got away with it if they thought they could.
No.
They got this passed, they got you to send it to Kansas, and we're grabbing our ankles.
It's so easy to say that answer until I get another bad winter. And I'm just going to tell you that portion of Johnson Drive between Lamar and Null. The real problem is the water lines underneath it are so old, they collapse, it seems like every other week. Hence, we have wastewater and water issues underneath Johnson Drive right now. Well, we're not the water district, nor are we wastewater. I mean, that's one of the other problems that we have. We only control the street. One of the problems that we have is that sometimes we have 100 people coming at us with 100 different perspectives. And I think collectively you're going to have to get to the same page. And the same page is the city needs to do something different than this, but we don't know what the different is yet. Who would the city work with amongst all the businesses to arrive at what this is, the alternative? Because that's the biggest fear that I have. Because I hear Johnson Drive businesses, and then I hear